Hey everybody, welcome. I'm back, and hopefully I'll be back just for a little bit. But we're gonna try to do these every Thursday. I'm sorry I didn't do one last week. It was one of those things where I'm at pace and middle of nowhere, and always busy. And the week before I did one though at in Santa Fe, but. Next week, we're probably going to do one back here. I am going to be doing the Cedarburg Plein Air Fest, and so I'll be there all week, but I will come back for this Thursday night to teach you guys. So I don't want to ever give this up. So, and this is really good for you. I think it's it's way of learning, and I'm telling everybody all the time about just come and watch. It's a good way, I think, of learning how to do the watercolor. Today we're doing a watercolor with a little bit of gouache, but we are going to be doing these clouds, and I do that in my class as the first day, and we do skies. We do like a sunset scene, and I did that in Santa Fe, where it's really good to learn how to do soft and hard edges. And basically, doing a sky like this is a great way of learning how to do wet and hard edges and float your pigment. All right. And we're going to see who's here today. Hey, guys. Hey, Maria, Dave, Sue, Wendy. Let's see anybody else is down there. All right, so let's get going here with my website. So my website is davidartbecker.com or beckerart.net. Either one. I'm probably going to start using the davidartbecker.com again. More than the other one, just because I'm going to hopefully redo my whole website and get things all together. And so there's where you get the weekly. And somebody told me that when you press on the newsletter one, it didn't come up. So always remember, you can go to my website, and if you press right here, if you press right where the picture is, it'll load it up and make it big. And so I know I missed putting the link on, I think, in my newsletter, because I did the newsletter like really quickly in a hotel room, and so I just probably forgot it. It took me 3 days to get back from Reno. I'll probably never do that again. All right, so let's go to our supplies. It's at a Holbein, and my brushes, my Becker Art brushes, and those are the colors I'll be using. Well, not all of them, but I'll be using Stonehenge Aqua paper. Let's go to our value pattern. And so the value pattern on this one, because it's pretty much a simple kind of scene, what you want to think of is that there's not a big center of interest like some of the landscapes you do, because there's no house or a specific thing. But the clouds, the redness of the clouds is what's going to be part of your center of interest. So basically it's going to be an area. Let me just show you the area where it's going to be your center of interest. And this whole area right here, this whole area with the red clouds right here and going to orange down here. And then the texture that I'm going to try to get here in the land, you could put something there, but I'm just going to make it textury and make it a little bit more textury than anywhere else, so that's where my center of interest is going to be, this area. And of course the light and dark, the no tan, this gray up here will be the red, some of the red and some of the lights. But this dark up here and this dark down here are only dark. So it's a pretty simple composition when it comes to the lights and darks. But this one is going to take a little bit of doing with the color. So the color is going to help this one out a lot when it comes to your set of interest. So the clouds, because you're basically doing a cloud. And I'll do my first wash where I do it wet in the wet and get my lights. But while I get my lights, I'm going to have to get some of my middle tones in there, and even some of my darks, because this has some darks in it, and so I want to get them soft edge, because clouds usually are soft edge, right? So I'm going to try to do that all in one wash and see if I can or not, and we'll see. And hey, Marion, Carol, Wendy, I think I said hi to Wendy already. So let's get on to our tabletop and get going here. And so I didn't draw the clouds in. I did a little bit, very little bit, because I'm going to put it up on my screen here so I can actually see it. Hold on one second. I'm sorry I didn't do that. And so I'm going to put it up here so I can see, and you can see the colored version. I just have to know where like the red is going to be, and so I'm just going to wet the whole thing wet into wet. And on my palette, you can see I smeared my palette because I'm going to use a little bit of this red gouache. So this is gouache, but I'm going to use a really bright red gouache. And I'm going to use it like a watercolor, though. I'm not going to use it thick. And I'm going to show you how that you can also get gouache, which is watercolor. It's just opaque watercolor. And what I'm going to do is use it because it covers really well. But you can use it like a transparent watercolor when you dip it into, when you like float it into water. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be floating gouache. It's watercolor. Don't, people always think that you can't mix them together, and you definitely can mix them together, and you can actually make gouache work like watercolor, like transparent watercolor. It all depends on how much water you put down and how much pigment you lay into the water. Me and my floating my pigment, that's my big thing, right? But I smeared it all out, so I'm going to put a little bit more up here. I'm just going to use a bright red. I know there's a pink. It's more pink, the clouds. And I can do that. I have opera right here. So let me just show you. I'm going to clean my opera up a little bit. It's right here. Excuse me. So let's get going here. And I'm just going to wet the whole thing. Wet the whole paper. So I'm just wetting it, and I'm going to let it soak a little bit so that it gives me enough time. And I can go right into my mountains because my mountains will be cooler back there. But the yellow right there, when I put the cool on there, it may turn it to a little bit of a green. So let's see. We'll just go through. And you're going to do the lights first, but I may have to keep my sprayer here because I kind of want to get the sky done in one wash, basically. And it's hard sometimes because you got to keep it wet. So I'll use my mister, and I'll just mist it right now just to even it out. I'll put it up there, and I'm just going to even things out. Look at my overhead lights are on, so I can see the shadow right there. Let me turn those off. Sorry. All right, there we go. Get my thing out of there. All right, so there we go. A little bit better when it comes to lighting. I haven't been in my studio in so long. It's like I forget all the things I put on and let off. And so next week, like I said, I'm doing the Cedarburg Plein Air Fest. And I may do a couple demonstrations when I'm actually painting during the week. But I will on Thursday, like I said, on Thursday, everything's got to be in anyway. So I'll be doing this paint along. So we'll do that still. We'll still do that. Sunday, I don't think I can do one because I'm going to have to get a lot done on Saturday and Sunday. And so here, and that's in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. And that's like, look, I'm getting this. This is actually that hot press board. I thought I was using Stonehenge, but I'm not. I'm using this board, the Crescent board. And look, it's giving me the texture, but that's okay. It goes away usually. Now let's get a little bit of the orange down here in the bottom. If you have questions, please let me know. Holbein Opera definitely is the best, Carol. It is a really cool color. No, not cool, great color. It's not a cool color. It's a very warm color, actually. So I'll put a little bit of the yellowish orange down here. Let it bleed into my blue. It's going to get a little green, but that's okay. I'm going to go from that to a little bit of the red and some opera. And I'm just going to kind of make the clouds go into a little bit of opera. Makes it a little bit brighter orange. And you notice how there's a bunch of very small little, look at this texture on here. This paper, the board, I don't know why I used it, but this is the first thing I saw when I got in my studio, so that's why. And so let's put a little bit of violet, lavender. I'm putting a little lavender in this down here, because on this side, farther away from the sun's over here. Sun's over here, and so I'm going to make this a little bit more lavender and lilac color. So some of these clouds. And use thicker pigment when you want it to just not bleed all over the place. If you want to have specific like lines that you want to get, then use it thick, because you can keep it from floating out. My paper is very wet, right? I sprayed it even, and it's giving me this little texture, which is, you know, the board. So for some reason, this board does that once in a while. But I'm going to go in here. It's very wet, and so if I use a lot of pigment, I can still get a soft edge, but it's going to give me, it's going to be a little bit harder than normal. And so I want that with the clouds, right? I want to get in here with the clouds. And I'm going to have to spray up here a little bit. Where's my sprayer? I missed it. Real lightly. Don't. This is not a pump. It's a continuous thing, so you just kind of go over like this. And first you pump it a little bit, and you just kind of go over it. There we go. And I'm going to try, like I said, to get a lot of my washes done now, and so that I don't have to go back into my sky later and re-wet it. I'm just going to try to get all these clouds in here now. I kind of work from the bottom here upwards because it gets darker as it goes up. So this is way back here is where the sun is. It's going down, right? The sun is going down. So I'm going to try to get these lines thicker. It's like you're using the transparent watercolor, like gouache, like using it thick. But it's transparent, so it will go onto your paper transparently. And so learn the difference and get both. You know, get the gouache and the transparent pigment, because you can use them both, like in a wet wash like this, and you can use the gouache for when you want it really thick. I know Maria's online here, and she's got a gouache thing. So if you're in Lake Zurich, actually, let's see, Maria can put it up there. The dates. It's in Lake Zurich at the Main Street Gallery. She's teaching gouache, and if you're in that area and you want to take it, go to mainstreetgallery.com, I think it is, the website. Wet it again because see, it's just soaking in, and so I'm just going to wet it a little bit. I need soft edges, and my blue is already there, so now I'm going to get these dark washes of color. When I was in Pace, one of the big names, Mike Hernandez, was doing gouache, and I never got a chance to see his work because I was working in the booth of Holbein, and especially when he was on, and he was a big hit there. I mean, a lot of people were talking about his workshop, or not his workshop, but his demonstration. And they all liked it. But I didn't get a chance to go it because I was, like I said, I was in the booth demonstrating myself. There's so many people demonstrating at one time too, and it's hard to pick out and choose. But if you ever get, next year, it's going to be in the Ozarks, and so if you can get there to the Ozarks, it's really amazing with all the people teaching, all the top name teachers that where you like their stuff. You know, they're there teaching. They're demonstrating is what you're doing. And then when you go out painting, they come up to you, and you can ask them for help. And in the evening, you usually go out. In the afternoon, you go out painting. So now I'm just doing little by little. See, I'm just keeping it wet and trying to get all the colors in there I need. And make sure it's still wet and evenly wet so that you don't lose the wetness. So every once in a while, I'm just going to spray like this very lightly. Don't soak it, just a little bit. It goes a long way, but it gives you time then to just get all those little clouds. And that basically this whole picture is nothing but clouds, right? And so take your time and just keep it wet and work it until you got what you want. That's one thing about watercolor. You can keep it wet with these misters and just keep on working. Be careful and try to make sure that you don't put too much water on. And I always tell people, don't spray it, mist it, and just put it like a little layer over the whole thing, real lightly. Let's see, I'm just getting these darker clouds in there. Though I should get some of the light ones in first, right? Let's get the red in there now. Red and pink. I'm just going to red, pink, and orange. And so up here, there's a lot of red. Look at that red in there and pink. So opera and red. I'm just going to go in here and just... And it's kind of textury, so I can even spatter it maybe a little bit. That's starting to dry. See, when you get a hard edge, don't keep on going. Wet it, because I don't want a hard edge up there. So wet it a little bit so you get a soft edge. And I can go over the dark parts because that's going to be covered with another. I just need the lights first, and then you cover it while it's still wet with the dark. I'm just going to get the lights in here. And down here, there's a little bit. And I didn't draw, like I said, I didn't draw any lines in. I'm just making up the clouds because you don't have to be exactly on with the clouds, right? I mean, they don't have to be drawn perfectly. You know, they can look like something else that they're going to make up. Like when you go out there and look at clouds, you make stuff up out of it. Over here, we're going to put a little red in there. There's a little red up in here and there. Thanks, Ginger. I'm glad you learned something, and I'm going to keep on doing them. Definitely going to keep on doing them. And actually, I was telling a lot of my students up there is that next year I'm spending all of next year working on getting a specific style. I really want to work hard, and so I'll be doing these paint-alongs all the time, but I'm not going to do any workshops next year. Sorry about that, but I have to get. As I saw how much these professional artists paint, and I thought to myself, boy, I do a lot of teaching, but I've never had the chance to really get and work a lot of paintings to make it look like my own kind of style. So next year, I decided to take time off of teaching. Not my local and not these. I'm gonna still do these on Thursday and Sunday morning. But I will be not doing workshops next year. 26. I'll probably start up again in 27. But I need to take some time and just really work hard on creating a style for myself. I've done that. I've taught so much, and last year I think I overworked myself I overdid it with how many workshops I did. And this year I've only doing, like I said, I did 4. I'm going to be doing, because I did 2 in Florida, did 1 in Santa Fe, and now I have my last one will be in Dillman's, which is they just put out a little thing this afternoon. But I'll be doing that this year. But next year, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. And then, like I said, you can still watch me here, though. And this will still be going on. And this is free, so it doesn't cost anything, and you don't have to travel anywhere. That is, unless like a Watercolor Society invites me to do their judging, then I would have to do I usually have to do a workshop too. But that's the only thing I may have to do, but not my other regular workshops. Hey, Sherry from Indiana, Linda. All right, so see how you just go slowly? You just keep on going slowly and just work it. And if it starts getting too dry, you have the mister, remember? Just spray it over the top of it. And the thicker the paper, or the thicker the paint in the wetness, the more you can control it. And see how I'm just going to control it into the water. And don't use your towel. Use your towel here to wipe off if you need to wipe off. I'm just going to kind of get some blue and purple. And how you dull that down? Purple, a little bit of yellow or yellow-orange. Makes it kind of brown, but I'm going to add a little bit more of that in there. And so I want to make this a little bit darker. And remember, it dries 20% lighter, so don't be afraid of making it 20% darker. Make it look too dark, that's okay. Use enough pigment to get in there. Use a little bit of blue. And it's going to dry soft. Like I said, this board, for some reason, it always gives me this like little acne on it when I'm working it. And but then it goes away at the end. It's kind of weird. But I just had it laying here, and so I thought that's what I'd use. I got to get all set with my panels and stuff. When you're doing a plein air event, you got to kind of have all your panels ready with frames and everything, and have them all ready to go, and then you just paint either vertical or horizontal. So you got to get a few extra ones and make some horizontal, some vertical, and that's the framing, I mean. And so you're never not quite sure what you're going to be painting out there. I know I'm going to paint probably buildings, right? But so here's a little bit of opera again. Yeah, at Pace, I met so many unbelievable artists. Some of these instructors, faculty, they're just phenomenal. And when you look at their paintings and how many paintings they have done, that are like not studio paintings, or that are studio paintings, I mean, and that are not, because I do a lot of painting, but it's all for teaching, right? So I need to get some painting done for myself that, I can use in some of these shows, and I never usually, a lot of times I paint for the shows, and you really shouldn't paint for shows. You should just paint, go into your studio and paint, or paint in plein air. That's fine too. So you go down here and see how slow I can do this. You just keep on going and just work it until you feel it's right. And every once in a while, like, that's pretty harsh. So again, I'm going to spray it a little bit, just a little bit. And down here, I see this is kind of fading away. Well, it's still wet, so I can still go down there, and you still get all that work done down there. You don't have to work it fast. You work it slow. And even when this is dry, I can still put stuff on top of that too. I can re-wet little areas if I want. Let's put a little bit more of this brighter blue in here. And then I can do I can do a little tapping in it, so it hit all this little like texture clouds. Maybe I'll tap it a little bit. I'm glad you guys enjoy the videos. I'm so happy, and I've been getting a lot of in the last 2 weeks. The one video I did of taping your paper got 17,000 likes on it. I couldn't believe it, and so it's like I'm getting a lot more subscribers. I'm up almost 7,000, and so it's it's fun. I would not quit this because I really enjoy doing these and seeing, and I think it's good for everybody too. It's good for me. It's good. I get practice in, and it also helps you guys out. It teaches you something and shows you how I'm just painting, basically. And then you can paint along if you want, or I know some people said they're going to paint along tonight or today. Because my classes that I do during the week are still going to be going on too. My local classes. And so, let's see. So then down here, we're going to get more of the red, orange. See, that's too hard. Let me use my round brush now because I'm kind of drawing, and I like to, when I'm drawing, I like to use like a round brush. It's almost like a pencil. So, and using a big brush is okay with the tips of it, but I kind of like to use the small round brush because it's almost like you're drawing the clouds. Like you can also tap it like this. It's a little bit thicker. I notice my paint is not thick enough in some spots here. And if you have questions, please ask. I'm looking up once in a while. If you got questions, let me know. And if you got questions after the video is over, you can still ask. You can still ask in the description part. And so this is a little bit more blues in here. And I can mix it. I can mix, instead of mixing on my palette, mix it on your paper. Because sometimes you can do that and it looks kind of nice because you know how your palette always looks cool, and so that kind of makes your palette look like your painting look like a palette. where you're getting a lot of beautiful edges. And yeah, I think this board got old or something, because it like the sizing doesn't seem like it's perfect right anymore. But if you're skilled in floating your pigment, I told my students this in Santa Fe, is that you can paint on anything, really, because it's all just water laying there, and then you put the pigment in the water, and that's how you get the texture. You know, you can spatter, you can spatter like this, or you can use salt, but it's all about that water first, and then putting your pigment into the water. And the more pigment, the less it's going to bleed, right? And so you just learn that. You learn how to put the pigment down, and then little by little, you do different things that you like better than other, styles. Like you may want to do all soft edges, or maybe you want to do all hard edges, like John Pike. It all depends on what you want to do. And how do you know what you want to do? Paint. Paint a lot. That's how you learn. It's just painting a lot. Paint, paint, paint. I've been practicing like for the this coming week when I was in Reno, and we went out and painted, and I was really trying different things, and I posted some of them, and but I just wanted to see certain ways of painting outdoors, because it dries faster sometimes, and I like to work. Lately, I've been liking to work into a wet wash and do a lot of it. Some of the best painters that I like, that I kind of look at, is the one Asian painter. I think is Chen Wei or something like that. Oh my gosh, his soft edges is just phenomenal. And it's always good to get inspired by other artists. I'm hoping you get inspired by my work here during this lessons and stuff. But you can paint like this, but look at other painters, look at their work, and copy their work and see what you like, see what you maybe the certain subject matter, certain style. I'm really liking the definitely the wet in the wet kind of style look, where there's a lot of soft edges and controlling your pigment. It's just controlling your pigment in a wet surface. And you all have learned that. I mean, I've every class I've ever done, I get them to do that, because it's just basically putting down water and putting pigment into the water. And the thicker the pigment, of course, it's going to be, it's not going to bleed as far. So just keep that in mind at all times. You can, it's not that hard. And sometimes I tell my students to practice it, not on a painting, but just with a sheet of paper. Do an abstract and just kind of practice to be able to do a wet into wet surface and get the soft edges. And with that, you need to have enough pigment in your palette. And that's another way I can tell if you have enough pigment in your palette. Fresh pigment, or Holbein, which always stays fresh. Now, you need to have fresh pigment. You need enough pigment so that it can float there in the water. And you can even use white, because white will be transparent when you float it in the water, because it's just floating above the paper, and you can see through it. So sometimes you need that to control an edge a little bit more. Like this lavender that I've just used right here, that has white in it. And so if I use it thick like this, it's going to be light. It's going to be, a kind of darker, but it's going to give me a soft edge that I can control. If it was, I'm using the white of the paper and I need to get that color, I need to put white in there so it doesn't spread out. Because if I just use a little bit of that, like a tint, then it's going to not spread. It's going to spread all out because there's too much water. But if I use a lot of pigment, then it'll just stay right there. See, I can just make it stay. And that should be a little bit more orange, I think, on the bottom. So don't be afraid sometimes to use pure pigment. And that's, I think, when you're using gouache, it helps you when you're using gouache, because gouache, like this red of the gouache, is really, really, it's opaque. And so it'll make everything super opaque. So Maria, tell them about your class. Go to at Maria Brushstrokes. That's where you can find out her class if you're in the area of Lake Zurich in Illinois. She's doing a class, I think, in July, I think. Well, she'll tell you. Just go ahead and tell everybody in the comments there. Yeah, I came back on Sunday. I think it was Sunday. No, Monday. I came back on Monday evening. I drove 3 days. I've never driven so much in my life. It was a lot. It was like I don't think I'll be doing that again. I love driving road trips, but not in 3 days to do, I think almost 2,000 miles. It's like, it's just too much. Here I'm using opaque. I'm using white and yellow. And I'm getting some white lights back because this is going into the paper. And so I add white, and now it's opaque white. But it's not the gouache, it's just watercolor white, and which acts the same as gouache, because gouache is watercolor also, but just opaque watercolor. But it does have some different pigments in it, and some different mediums in the actual that are different from watercolor. That's like it dries a little bit more than the transparent watercolor. That's why you got to put it into a special container so it doesn't dry out on you. So look how long it's taken me to do the sky. Look how long I've been working on it and just working it until I like it. I'm not going to leave it until I like it and I get done with it, and then I will go on to my middle tones. And this is my middle tones also. And I probably should get this a little bit darker, but I can do that later because it's got kind of light. Got a little light there, and I think it's dry by now. Yeah, this board is terrible, man. Gotta stop using it. Well, I'm gonna use it up, I think. All right, so now let's go back here in the background and get some pure yellow in here. Place that over the top. If you are from Illinois and you want to try getting into some of the plein air fests and paint along with the plein air painters, there's one in Evanston that's coming up, I think. And there's also one in St. Charles later on during the summer. So just look them up. There's St. Charles, if you're in Illinois. Because they are fun. They are fun to do, and you can have a chance to sell your work, and it's the kind of competition too. Always fun. A friendly competition, and you learn so much because everybody helps you. You can get help from everybody. Give you a little inspiration and stuff, because it's fun to be inspired by having to do something that you normally haven't done. So I recommend, or teaching too. If you ever want to learn a lot, teach people or kids. Teach kids. So now I'm putting opaque in here now because I lost all my white because this paper is just really bad, and so I'm putting a little bit of more opaque in there, but it's still wet, so it's still giving me a soft edge and it's still floating. Put a little bit more in there. All right, let's go away from our sky now. That's pretty much all I want to do now. I think I overdid it. Let's see, just a little bit more here. All right, so now I go into my darks, but my middle tones, my large middle tones and darks, but basically it's all the rest of the painting, which is the mountains, right? The mountains from the far distance will be kind of purplish because I wanted a red to kind of get in there. And I will put some opaques in here, I think, with the red, because I think I may put two different kinds of opaque in there, dark and the red, just to kind of smudge it in there. I'm going to show you how you can actually use the watercolor like an opaque watercolor. Because it's, you can use the watercolor like gouache. Even though it's not gouache, you can use it thicker and make it opaque. And so let's see. Let's go with the first layer of, it goes from light to dark and textured up here, right? So maybe use my bigger brush to get in there and get the big background. So I'm going to go with a light bluish purple. And I got to keep it light, a little bit lighter back there. So a little bit of lavender in there. And so way in the distance, and this is still wet, so I'm going to get a soft edge, but that's okay. I'm going to use a lot of paint. See, if you use thick paint, then it'll get harder, but it's still going to give it a little bit of a soft edge because of how wet it is. It's not totally wet, but it's going to give you, see how it's bleeding out right there? So use it a little bit thicker, get rid of the water on my brush like this, and just turn it over. And I can go through everything because what I can do is I can just go like this through everything, wet it as I go along. Now I didn't wet it first, I wet it as I went along because I wanted it to be a little bit drier. Yeah, I've never seen so many, you're talking about the drive, boy, I've never seen so many deserts and mountains and deserts, and went through Salt Lake City. I think I took a circle around almost all of the United States because at first I went to Santa Fe, and so then from Santa Fe through Vegas all the way up to Reno, and then back up through Utah, Wyoming, down in Nebraska, and back home through Iowa. Yeah, it was definitely long. And another reason I couldn't do the Sunday because I had to get home. it was like 9 hours a day, 10 hours a day to driving. I just couldn't do a Sunday morning. Because I was driving that Sunday morning, I left right over pretty early. Next time, though, if I ever do something like that, it's going to be like within a month, so I can stop everywhere, because I would have loved to stop at a lot of places. So see, I'm putting it a little bit thicker, a little bit darker. And this is more bluish purple. And as I get forward, I'm going to go more with a earth tone, coming up with some of the red into the mountains. But right now, kind of grayish and bluish is what I'm going for. I have it drawn down, but if you don't get them exactly right, that's okay too. A little bit darker over here. And once you put down the water with the pigment, then it's wet, right? Then you can float your pigment again. You can even put some water in that too. And go back into the front, because it's darker as it comes forward. So don't be afraid of going over lines, because you can make the lines later on with the darker, your negative painting with the darker wash. And I'm going to put more red in it, warmer purple. And that goes, this one kind of comes over this way. And they're going to be soft edges. I could wait for each one to dry, but then it would, what time is it anyways? We could do that, wait for it to dry, and then do the next layer so it's hard edged. I'm going to wait for this one to dry a little bit more, and then we'll do the front one. But I also am going to want to have some texture in here. So I'm going to do a little bit of spattering, and like that. Yeah, Maria, the Main Street Art Center is where I teach on Wednesdays in the morning until noon. I teach there. And that's the Main Street Gallery in Lake Zurich. You just Google it, Main Street. And I'm sure the Maria's class is on the website, I'm sure. So just check it out there. We're going to go here. So now let's get a little bit darker. And see how I'm working in a wet wash, but I'm using a thicker paint. It's still floating, but then it gives me an option of softening the edge. The edge looks soft, and I can put thicker like this. See how it's thicker, dark? And it gives it a neat look. I like that look a lot, and that's what like I was telling you before. I want to paint like that artist I don't know the name of. So that's what he does. He does a lot of wet in the wet, a lot of soft edges. And I learned how to do that basically by doing gouache, by using gouache like watercolor, but then also using it thick in a wet surface. And it helps out your watercolor anyways. It really helps it out to know how much pigment you have on your brush, how much water you have on your paper. It's all about water pigment ratio. Everything about watercolor is that. And sometimes if you want to use the opaque watercolor gouache, then it helps to cover up like the white of the paper if you want to cover up. And that even works with wet in the wet. See, it's like it doesn't always have to be thick like you're using it, like oil painters do use it. because you can use it like that at the very. I use it like that at the very end. I put down heavy, thick pigment at the end, not when I'm doing my first washes when I want my soft edges. Though if I want to cover something up, like if I wanted to cover like a really dark here and cover up really well, I would use gouache and then use it wet in a wet, and it'll cover better because it's opaque, right? So now go in here. Now this one's really dark, and putting texture in there's so many ways of texture. I can't even list them all here. It's just like, salt, sponges, rubber band brushes. Oh my God, there's a million ways of getting texture, spattering, and you have to just test different techniques of texture by just painting and practicing with paper where you're not doing it actually a painting either. You just practice with paper and see what kind of textures you can get. John Pike used to use a cigarette. He just tap it into the wash, and it would give him a texture. So I wouldn't recommend that so much, but it's whatever you want it to be. It's your painting. You do the texture and practice it and learn different techniques. Make a technique up that you will only be yours. I've seen people use credit cards to make texture. To make the pine or the birch trees, they do that with birch trees. So there's always something, a certain thing that you can do with something. I've seen people use onion bags to then rub their onion bag onto the paper to get a certain texture. It's all up to you. You learn those things and find something that's your own. And keep it to yourself, because do a bunch of paintings that's your thing. That's your style. And then when you get famous for it, then you can go out there and teach it and teach people how to do that. So now it's getting really dark up here. See, it's getting a little bit darker now, and a little bit bluer back here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wet this area in front and then just start texturing the heck out of it. And I'm going to maybe use all the things I just talked about. We'll see. I can slap it like this. Put it down like that. Dry. See, that's dry because that's dry and that's wet, right? So a lot of times you can get texture when it's dry. The paper is dry. And this up here has to be really, really dark. So I'm going to go into all these dark colors and start, pasting them down like this. Maybe up back and forth like this. And the weird thing is that you don't have to like do a style. It just becomes a style when you paint. And that's what I'm going to do next year. Is I'm just going to paint a lot of paintings, and then let the creation of my work just create its own style. That's what happens when you paint a lot. You just start doing things that you don't even realize you're doing, and then it becomes your style. I don't ever say that you should go out there and try to paint like somebody exactly to get their style. You just paint the way you paint, and then little by little you'll develop a style. It's like you develop it. You don't have to like work it. You just paint like you normally do and just keep on painting. And of course, every teacher you take, you do learn a little bit from them and get a certain style. With me, it's like everything. So I'm just going in here. I'm gonna cover it up and spatter in here too, because I love that's you know me and my spattering. I love spattering. Splattering, or is it called splattering or spattering? I'll call it splattering because I do a lot of splatter around everything. I do it into wet surface, dry surface. I like taking a brush like that and also drumming the board to get texture in the front here. Okay, and I'm gonna take a piece of paper and cover my sky because I'm gonna spatter. So I'll put that right out there. And now I'm just going to take my round brush, and I notice there's some like light blue type of color on top here, so I'll take a little bit of this light color, tap it onto another brush. See how that style just comes in there, how easy that is. I'm not going to paint every one of those rocks. That would be, I'm not a hyper-realist, and so hyper-realist would paint every one of those rocks in there. I do impressionistic, so I make an impression of the rocks. A bit lighter in some spots, and you can also, you can draw some things in like this too. Push it around, but look at those neat little things. Isn't that cool? All right, so the tops of this, I'm going to make it a little bit on my own because I want to look like there's some light hitting the tops. I'm going to take a little bit of white. I'm just going to put a little white, and that's gouache. You know, it's actually watercolor white, but when anything is opaque, that is called gouache. That's opaque watercolor. So the tops of that. And now I want a little bit of warmth down there, if you want to see what it looks like. See? It's just texture. Remember, talking about texture. So a lot of different ways. Or like one of those natural sponges, you can just sponge it down like people used to do to their walls. All their walls were like sponged. Yes, I am mixing a little bit of gouache and watercolor on the mountains, Carol. Yep. But when it's wet, again, when the surface is wet and you're floating your pigment, it doesn't matter if you use gouache because gouache will become transparent because it's floating. And if you don't put a real lot, it will act like watercolor. Now, depending on what color you use, you know, if it's a bright color, it'll just be when I use the red, it'll be transparent. I used the red. That's gouache, but it's transparent because I used a lot of water. So that's when I get across to people, and I think I may have to make a video on that one day, is let people realize that gouache is no different from watercolor, like transparent watercolor, other than the fact that there are different, the way they make it is a little bit different, but it still acts like watercolor transparent if you use it wet in the wet. Now, you shouldn't use the transparent watercolor really thick. It's not made for that. But the gouache is made to make it a little bit thicker, but not really thick like oils. I mean, you just have to put it on, but not as thick as oils. Unless you're using acrylic gouache, then that's okay. But like I can use my watercolor a little bit thicker. Like I'm going to put up here, I can use a little bit thicker. Now this is not the gouache. This is watercolor opera, and with a little bit of opaque red. The red, look how vibrant that is, and it's going to be, it's almost too much when I use it by itself. See, it's so thick, and it covers up. The gouache covers up and gets rid of the white completely, unless you use water. Remember, if you see look how thick that is. That's not even thick, and it just covers up because there's a little bit of that red in there. And why it does that is because it's ground finer. It's a really fine grind that they do on that pigment, so it's just so much more pigment. But if you put a lot of water, then you have to use a little bit of that, and you get a nice tint also of that color. It all depends how wet how much pigment and how wet it is. Everything is about the water ratio of pigment to water. And let's try some pink. And let's just put some pink in here that's opaque. This is opaque now. And I know a lot of people, the traditionalists will never do this. If you're a traditional watercolorist, you're not going to be doing this at all because they do everything transparently. I want my style to be a little bit of both. I kind of like that look of, I'm going to try a lot of that this next week. Starting Saturday, I'm going to try a lot of it where I'm painting with both, where it's thick and thin. Because, you know, oil painters use it thick, acrylic painters use it thick, watercolors now can also use it thick if you want. And you can mix them together. And it's kind of my style I kind of want to make up that is, well, it's not a style yet, but we'll see. Well, this is kind of like what it is. And now look how light that turned out. And so I'm going to go in there. And I can even wet this again too, though. See, like if this is opaque right now, I can also put water on it, and it'll just bleed back into the paper, and it will float again. And I'm going to wet this area again because I want to make it darker. It's just not dark enough. So I'm going to take a little bit darker. And as long as you wet it and you float your pigment, you can do this 100 times. As long as it's dry, you re-wet it, put the pigment on top, and it will not take the stuff underneath it away. It'll just cover up, especially if you're going darker, it'll just go on top and it'll just blend in with what's underneath it. And it'll still give you a soft edge because I wet it. Now this paper ends up feeling like blotter because I think some of the sizing is bad on it. But you work with it. It's fine. Even if I'm using a watercolor that's kind of has a little bit of white in it, like this horizon blue, you can still make it look transparent by using a little bit more water, letting the pigment float. A little bit darker up there now. See, a little bit darker. And why do I want it darker? So that my lights come up a little bit lighter. There is something on over here somewhere. It keeps on buzzing. I have no idea what that is. And see, I can just add water with my brush too. I can add water to it on top of it, and that'll make my soft edges. It's still floating because I'm putting water on top, but then it floats. Gouache used to be a paint that everybody hated because it was very pastel, a lot of whites. They used whitening agents to make the pigment opaque, and that's how come people didn't like it very much. But now that Holbein and a lot of other companies are making it without whitening agents, and actually I think Holbein is basically one of the few that doesn't use whitening agents. Because that's what they were saying all the time about their gouache. It's not, they don't put whitening agents so that it stays opaque. And this right here is pink as watercolor, by the way. But the way I'm using it is like gouache. I'll get you guys all confused. I'll get you guys so confused you don't know what's up and down. This is a little bit too blue right there. Let me make that a little bit more purpley. And also, because my paper is acting weird, it's another reason I'm doing a little bit more of this gouache too, because gouache covers up the parts that are not working right because of the paper not being so good. So I'm just using gouache because it goes right over it and covers it up. So if you ever have a crack in your picture, or not a crack, but a scrape, I can usually fill it up with the gouache paint. Like still wet in the wet, but fill it up with the paint because the paint is thicker, and you can fill it up with that little, like if it's a gouge in your paper, you just fill it up with gouache. Yeah, the texture, how it, even though I had it wet, now once it bleeds, it kind of goes flat and stuff, but that's cool. Worked out okay. Almost done here. I'll do a little bit more. So I'm going to wet this area again too because it kind of light. And that's the hardest part, I think, for me to teach and for students to learn, is to make your painting look wrong. What I mean? I mean, make it darker than you're supposed to look in the first wash. Because a lot of times it's hard for you to go, oh, that's too dark, and you're going to make it lighter, right? No, keep it dark because it's going to lighten up, 20% lighter. And usually we never make it light, or never make it dark enough. Always making it too light. Which is not a bad thing either sometimes. Sometimes I like the paintings being a little bit lighter. I see how it's hard edged because it's dry. But I can wet it as I go along. I can just wet it as you go along here. Get some a little bit more of this pink in here. questions? Because I'm almost done here. What the heck is that sound? I keep on hearing something go. Maybe I have mice in my place here. Let's see, what else? What else? Let's make this a little bit pinker too here. I like pink and orange together. It's like a salmon color. I really love that color. It's like they should make a color called salmon color. Pink and orange. And this is a little damp still, but it's kind of opaque, as you can see, and it's also hard edge because it's not wet. So I'm going to put water in it now and just bleed some of it together. And this you normally would not do. I would not do that on a good sheet of paper, but this paper, you can tell it's like a blotter and it's just bleeding all into it. So I just put more pigment in there and that'd be fine. One thing you can definitely determine when you have a piece of paper like this is that it gives you soft edges all the time because it's like a blotter. The sizing must be bad on this paper because it's not holding the paint in, and when that happens, that means that the sizing is old or the paper is old. Yes, paper can get old. Somebody actually asked that last week. Can paper get old? And yes, it can. It can get old and it doesn't work right because the sizing is not on. And then it's like a blotter. And basically just like what this paper is doing. But I think this is the last part of that board, so I'll remember not to use any more of that. Go back to my Holbein, back to my Legion paper, Stonehenge. That's always the best. Let's make this mountain a little bit darker because it looks like it's darker in the picture. And that'll be the last thing because it's 727. And that way it's dry now too. I can get a nice hard edge there. Unless you guys got some more questions. And also what I can do is on this side of the mountain, I can make it a little bit darker because again, the sun's going this way kind of. The light is kind of coming over this side of the mountain on this side. That shouldn't have been done because it should be a lighter mountain. So I'm going to put a little bit of lavender on that side. And let's call it a night. A little bit of texture right here with gouache. See, it's just a brush sticking it downwards and you can get texture that way too. Take your fingers and tap into it, get texture. All right, guys, that is it. Any last questions? Great Cat asked, but couldn't you darken that cloud with plain old watercolor once the white? Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Yep, you can. Either watercolor or gouache. It doesn't matter. Wet and a wet. Yeah, you can do that. Just got home very late, but I will rewatch from the beginning. Hey, Tina, thanks. Tina you're not in Cedarburg, but that's where I'm going this weekend, and all next week and also Port Washington in Wisconsin. We also have to paint there a little bit, so I'll probably be painting some boats there. So I will see you guys. Next class will be next Thursday. I'm probably not going to be able to do a Sunday paint or a Sunday demo because I have to get a bunch of paintings done for the competition and actually to sell. Actually, if you're in Cedarburg on Sunday from 3 to 5, or no, from 3 to 5 there in the park by the right downtown in the Civic Center, I think, or there's going to be a sale, so we get to put up works on the second day. So the Saturday and Sunday I got to be doing some work so I can hopefully sell some. All right, guys. So that was pretty fun, right? So keep it wet for a while, and if let's say it didn't, as it's dark enough, I could also take, and once it's dry, take my airbrush over that. I could always do that, or take your atomizer, or you just put a wash over that again with a little bit darker blue, because you can go over it. I would just spray it and then just put a little bit of wash on there, and there'll be no big deal. So there you go. Nice, simple, easy. Give it a shot and try it out. And if you have any questions, again, you can put it into the description also afterwards. And we'll see you next Thursday.